2 in the morning on August 2nd. Spokane should have been cooling off. The sun had been down for 5 hours. Small fires usually shrink then. Cool air settles. Moisture returns to grass and needles. Crews use that quiet to cut line. This fire did not shrink. It added nearly 1,000 acres between midnight and dawn. Maps at daybreak showed a darker edge north of town. A crew radio call logged steady flame past 2 a.m. Command staff marked it odd on the morning briefing. That odd habit is the core of this story. The county would later order 60,000 people to leave. Hundreds of homes would be gone before noon. And the reason night failed involved the air itself, not just wind. Another factor kept the ground ready to burn while people slept. By first light, the river bottom glowed from the bluff above. Ash fell like snow on Division Street 4 miles away. A state message board on Highway 2 flashed evacuation. People who checked phones at 1 a.m. saw no warning for their block. By 3 a.m., the same block was level 3. That is how fast the change came. Spokane had not seen night growth like this in recent memory. Even crews who worked the 2023 fires said they expected a pause. Command did not blame bad luck. The plan for Saturday had assumed night would help. When it did not, the math of the whole incident changed. That is the first piece to keep. Night did not help. 11:56 a.m. Saturday, August 1st. A patch of dry grass lit near Old Trails Road and West Euclid. The spot sits west of the airport by Airway Heights. The cause later ruled human, consistent with open flame to plants such as a lighter or a match. Wind at that hour ran 35 to 40 miles an hour steady, with gusts past 50. The National Weather Service had posted a particularly dangerous situation notice, one step above a red flag. Air near the ground hovered near 12 to 15% dry. The field beside the road held cheatgrass and short pine litter that carries fire fast. Within 20 minutes, the head stretched a mile. At 1 p.m., the front reached the Spokane River, and people who assumed water would stop it learned that wind-lifted bits can spot across. The park on the east bank is Riverside State Park, a mix of timber and trails where the fire ran without pause. By 2 p.m., it climbed the bluff into Indian Trail and 5 Mile Prairie, neighborhoods of houses built in the 70s and 80s where wood fences touch grass and bark dust rings foundations. The fire was no longer a wildland head, it had become a house-to-house event in dense blocks. Smoke columns framed downtown from 3 miles away, and a 2:30 photo at Gesser Pavilion showed brown sky behind the clock. Evacuation tones went block by block. Airway Heights police moved cars off Euclid, and transit buses staged for Fairwood. By 3:30, the sheriff issued level 3 for northwest Spokane, which means go now. At sunset, the count was 3,500 acres with no edge held. By Sunday morning, there were 3 heads, not one. Old Trails near Airway Heights, Autumn Lane near 9 Mile Falls, and Fairview near Meade together made the Spokane Complex. At first light Sunday, the joint count hit 5,390 acres, and by Monday the federal map logged 8,026 acres, 12.5 square miles. All was 0% held at the Sunday briefing, meaning no line would stop a run if wind rose again. California Team 7 took command at 9 a.m. Sunday, a crew usually sent to timber country, now parked on a city street. Spokane Mayor Lisa Brown spoke at the Sunday press conference and called the fires the worst natural disaster the region has faced. The phrase landed because Spokane is the state's second largest city, with 230,000 people inside city limits. About 60,000 were under level 3 Sunday. The sheriff's dispatch log showed almost 300 calls Saturday that needed a check. No deaths or injuries were confirmed Sunday, yet the sheriff kept a list. 14 names still not reached Monday noon. The number of burned buildings sat at about 600 Sunday night, with a warning it would climb as crews could reach blocks. Think of that gap. 60,000 people waiting to know if their street still exists, and the map still showed red with no black line around it. Then the counts came in by name. Old Trails sat at 3,226 acres on the later map, 43% lined, with 694 structures damaged or destroyed. Autumn Lane sat at 5,784 acres, 47% lined, with 168 structures. Fairview sat at 992 acres, 31% lined, with 59 structures. The low check put 913, the high check put 921, a difference of 8 buildings flagged but not yet matched between ground and satellite. Both numbers mean the same thing: more than 900 structures, about 700 homes and garages in one fire alone. Now do the division. Old Trails burned about 5 square miles and took 694 structures, about 138 per square mile of burn. Autumn Lane burned 9 square miles and took 168, about 18 per square mile. Fairview burned about 1.5 square miles and took 59, about 38 per square mile. The smallest large fire hit hardest per mile, the biggest large fire hit least. If damage scaled with acres, the chart would climb with size. It does not, it falls. The easy thought is that wind explains it. The push was stronger over Old Trails on Saturday and lighter over Autumn Lane later. But wind pushes flame across ground. It does not pick mailboxes. 2 fires with similar gusts left very different streets. Another county map shows why, and you can see it from a porch without a fire degree. The next fact tells you which porch will go first. Look at where Old Trails ran. Airway Heights grass, then the river, then a bluff about 40 feet up. On that bluff sits Indian Trail and 5 Mile Prairie, where lots are narrow, roofs sit 30 feet apart, and wood fences tie yards together. Bark dust circles foundation plants and juniper sits against siding. The city map marks this as wildland-urban interface, where homes sit inside dry fuel rather than beside it. Spokane adopted an interface code in 2021 and hired a full-time planner in 2022. Yet most houses here went up in the 70s and 80s. State data shows interface housing in Washington grew fast between 1990 and 2000, with intermix lots up almost 20%. That growth set the table, and when fire hit Riverside State Park, it did not need a wall of flame to take a block. It needed a shower, and this is embercast. Bits of burning bark and needles lift in the column, ride wind for a mile or more, and fall on anything that can catch. A gutter holding dry needles, a deck with leaves under it, a shake roof, or a juniper can all go from one landing. One ember finds one spot, that house lights, and the house itself becomes fuel for the next. That chain matters more than acres, and Autumn Lane proves it. Autumn Lane had more acres but wider lots, more timber between clusters, and fewer roofs per mile of edge, so a larger burn found fewer catches. The math shows it: 138 catches per square mile against 18, about 7 to 8 times denser. That is why 5 square miles erased 700 structures while 9 square miles took 168. If you want the quick repeat line, damage follows roofs per mile, not miles burned. Now the night piece. Fires are supposed to calm after dark because cool air holds less pull and fuel takes in moisture. That pull has a name. The drying power of air is called vapor pressure deficit, the gap between how much water the air holds and how much it could hold. On Spokane's first night, that gap stayed high. The incident plan logged overnight recovery at Cougar Lookout under 25%, meaning air stayed dry. Surface stations near the burn held near 17% through the early hours. Models showed west winds 12 to 20 miles an hour with gusts to 30, while the deficit stayed high. The forecast line read very poor overnight humidity recovery will support very active fire behavior. That line matters. Poor humidity recovery means needles and twigs never dampen, so flame does not lie down. Research shows why crews feel this more now. A study of hourly weather from 1980 to 2019 found summer nighttime deficit up about 50% in parts of the West. That is compared to the 80s and 90s. Warmer nights raise the ceiling for moisture, but in some basins the air also brings less water, so the pull doubles. Firefighters say fires now start earlier and quit later, and poor humidity recovery is the phrase they write when midnight looks like mid-afternoon. On August 1st into the 2nd, Autumn Lane added about 1,000 acres overnight while people slept, and Old Trails kept spotting past 2 a.m. The night that should have helped did the opposite, and that kept crews from catching the edge before the next day's push. By Sunday, the air had its own weight. Monitors at Argonne Library logged an index of 207. That number sits in the very unhealthy tier, where everyone feels it. Good is 0 to 50, moderate is 51 to 100. Above 100 is unhealthy for sensitive groups, above 150 is unhealthy for all. Above 200 is very unhealthy. Spokane hit 207. The cause was not one thing. Wildfire smoke is fine particles called PM 2.5, bits smaller than a hair that go deep in lungs. But smoke also brings gases that turn to ozone near the ground when sun and heat cook them. Ozone high up shields us. Ozone down low burns. It forms when nitrogen oxides and volatile compounds react in light. Heat makes the reaction faster. A high-pressure ridge had parked over the northwest, the same heat dome that dried the fuels. It put a lid on the valley. With no wind to clear it, smoke pooled. Temperatures climbed. The forecast called for mid-80s Tuesday, low 90s Wednesday, mid-90s Thursday. Each hot day baked more ozone in the afternoon, while particles stayed high through the morning. The County Clean Air Agency warned that readings could swing to hazardous, the top tiers. They told people to check the index hourly, to stay inside, to keep indoor air clean. For healthy adults, a long stretch at very unhealthy can trim lung function. For kids, older adults, and people with asthma, the risk jumps. Think of a pot with a lid. The fires add smoke, the sun adds ozone, the lid holds both, and the valley breathes it. While the air sat still, the investigation moved. The Department of Natural Resources had ruled out natural cause for old trails. No lightning, no downline. Focus went to the roadside near the start. A driver who passed that stretch near noon gave a description. He saw a man standing roadside looking into trees. 10 minutes later, on his way back, he saw the same man bending near grass. The man stood up, looked nervous, and walked away. The driver called Airway Heights Police and gave the look, clothing, direction. Officers were busy moving people out, but they went later that day to question a man. That contact built the case that led to a Monday night arrest. Spokane County Sheriff John Nowles stepped to microphones that night. He said investigators had arrested 37-year-old Aaron Farinacci of Spokane on suspicion of first-degree arson tied to old trails. The jail booked him on $1 million bond, with a first court date set for Tuesday. The probable cause paper says the fire investigator found the start consistent with open flame to vegetation. That is such as would be expected by a lighter or a match. Witness words about bending near grass matched the point of origin. The sheriff called old trails the most destructive of the three, which fits the structure count. He also said the other two fires remain under investigation, with no cause released yet. That matters. One arrest explains one ignition, not three. The court will handle that one. Washington holds first-degree arson as knowingly and maliciously causing a fire, a charge that fits when a roadside light is set on a dry, windy day. The arrest did not change the map. It did give a name to the start of the line that took 700 structures. Stop and test the simple story. One man lights grass, 700 homes burn, so blame him and move on. That story is too tidy. The sheriff tied him to old trails, not to Autumn Lane and not to Fairview. Those two have no cause announced and may never have the same name attached. Even for old trails, a light on a wet day in April does nothing. On August 1st, the light landed on fuel that had dried for weeks, with air near single digits and wind at 40. The state had warned of the worst fire weather tier. Any spark would have run that day. A chain dragging on Euclid, a mower hitting rock, a tossed cigarette. The outcome on Indian Trail would look much the same, because the block was ready. That ready block is not an accident. County maps show ladder fuel from grass to shrubs to low limbs to crowns, along the edge by Meade and North Spokane. The same maps show where the city added interface lots through the 90s and 2000s. More roofs touching grass means more chances for embercast to find a gutter. Poor humidity recovery the night before meant those gutters never dampened. So the fire found catches even after sunset. The arrest gives accountability for the start, but the landscape set the bill. When you see 700 structures on 5 square miles, you are not seeing a big fire. You are seeing a dense one. The bill is a density bill. The next ignition will not ask who lit it. It will ask which block has the closest roofs to the driest grass. Sunday at the Spokane Convention Center, the main hall became a shelter. Cots in rows, no televisions, air loud with fans and announcements. 92-year-old Donna Diebel sat near the entrance, a resident of an assisted living center in Fairwood, where buses came in a constant line Saturday as Spokane Transit staged for elders who could not drive. Diebel said families streamed in to pick up parents, everyone calm on the surface while the sky went brown. She told the reporter, "You roll with the punches, and at 92 you learn to." Across town, 29-year-old Alicia Davidson stood with a backpack, and she and her husband had lived on Lyons Court in northwest Spokane, about 1,500 feet from the river, where they were rebuilding a deck and thinking about stairs. Ash started to fall on the deck boards, so she packed go bags and loaded the car, and 10 minutes later the order came. They left with dogs and papers in the bags. Her husband went back later when the road opened for a few minutes and FaceTimed from the cul-de-sac where one house still stood and theirs did not. He could pull a barbecue, a few tools, and a fire pit from the ash while the rest was gone. Plants she had tended for 6 years, tall and thriving, were gone, and a wedding dress from this year was gone. They had just learned a baby was due in March. She said the only thing left of your whole life is your backpack, and that line spread because people knew it was true. The building count is 921, but that count is not roofs, it is the sum of years in drawers. 5 square miles does not sound large until those miles hold 700 houses, and that is a neighborhood erased, not a forest thinned. 3 years earlier, Spokane saw a similar start and a different math. August 18th, 2023. 2 fires lit the same day. The Gray Fire near Medical Lake and the Oregon Fire near Elk, called Oregon Road locally. Together, they burned about 23,000 acres, 36 square miles, more than twice the footprint of the 2026 complex. Wind that day topped 30 miles an hour, air near 6% dry, the driest model output the forecast office had logged for that date. Governor Jay Inslee declared an emergency then as well. The Gray Fire began from sparks from a faulty outside light. The Oregon Fire was human-caused. The losses were heavy: 366 homes gone, 710 structures if you count out buildings. 2 people died. Assessed property loss hit $166 million. At the time, officials called it the most catastrophic fire in county history. Now compare. 2026 burned about 10,332 acres, less than half the acres, yet more structures fell, 921 versus 710. How does a smaller burn take more houses? The footprint map explains. The 2023 fires ran more through wheat, grass, and open timber with fewer clusters of homes per mile of edge. They needed more miles to reach the same count. The 2026 fires started closer to dense blocks, so fewer miles found more roofs. That is not luck, it is growth. The interface ring tightened as lots filled in. More houses now sit where cheatgrass meets fence. The weather that dried the field in 2023 returned in 2023, returned in 2026, but the target had moved closer. By Friday, the lines began to hold. The Friday update put Autumn Lane at 37%, lined at 5,738 acres. Old Trails sat at 23%, at 3,561 acres. Fairview sat at 31%, at 992 acres. More than 10,200 acres together. By Saturday, another count moved Autumn Lane to 47%, at 5,783 acres. Old Trails moved to 43, at 3,556. Fairview stayed near 31, at 992. Nearly 2,000 firefighters from 176 jurisdictions worked the complex, up from 1,500 earlier. California Team 7 kept command. Lower temperatures and calmer midday winds helped, yet the edge was not cold. Contained means line around it. Controlled means no hotspots that can spot over. The complex was contained in parts, not controlled. Incident Command logged 26 private drones over the fires. Each sighting grounds aircraft for safety, water scoopers, helicopters, and tankers that had been dropping retardant and cooling edges. Power crews restored thousands, but up to 40,000 had been out at the peak. Hazard teams went into Level 3 zones on August 7th to flag chemicals, propane tanks, and asbestos in burned homes before anyone scoops debris. The County Health Office said inspectors must certify each lot first, a slow step that adds days. FEMA moved after the governor asked for a declaration. The White House approved help for Spokane, Stevens, Chelan, Ferry, Okanogan, Yakima counties, and the Spokane tribe, the Colville Reservation, and the Yakima Nation. The aid covers shelter, debris removal, medical supplies, and generators. Officials said re-entry would be block by block, not town-wide, and that some streets could be a week or weeks. There is a detail that keeps the story open. On August 5th, crews put Old Trails and Autumn Lane at 13% lined, Fairview at 5%. 3 days later, those numbers had tripled. Progress was real, but it rested on nights that had finally given moisture, not on a season turning. The long view shows those dry nights are not rare now. Research finds the nighttime pull up 50% in some western basins compared to the 80s. Spokane's interface ring is not shrinking. More lots are approved where grass meets fence. And the next August will bring another push day, with wind at noon and a forecast that may again read poor overnight humidity recovery. That phrase will sit on a plan while families wait block by block. While inspectors clear lots one by one, the structure count stays at a range. Ground checks and satellite flags have not matched to one number, 913 to 921. The question left is not who lit grass on Old Trails Road, that sits in a court file now, but which block will be the one where one ember finds a gutter when midnight does not dampen. Will the next night recover? That forecast is not on the fire map, it is on the weather page. Check humidity at 2 a.m. before you check acres at noon.